hello, and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I'm your host, Alasius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody doing today? How are you doing, Lacey?
Excellent. So, seems like we have something special in store
Yes.
for our viewers today.
We're going to do a little clip video. We did sort of review some of it because we knew that we needed talking points. But they've got a new thing on Ramsey. It's called the Smart Money Happy Hour. And it's got our two favorite people.
Wait a minute, Duncan, you didn't tell me that they called it a happy hour.
Oh, yeah.
I've only got tea happening here.
I just got water, so.
We're doing it wrong already.
Well, for us it's work having to watch this. But anyway. So this is George Skippy Camel and Rachel Where Am I Cruz.
Oh my goodness, it's your favorite and my favorite
combined.
So
all in one.
We can both be anxious and irritated at the same time.
Right. So they're going to talk about their most hated financial advice. And we're going to just do this little chunks at a time. And we're going to skip through some of it. But yeah, let's go ahead and start with them introducing themselves on the Smart Money Happy Hour.
Happy hour.
Cheers, George.
Cheers.
Very refreshing.
Fun for the whole family.
All right. Well, this is the podcast where two friends who happen to be money experts talk about what you're talking about. So everything from...
All right. So we opened with a lie.
We're money experts.
Well, he works for...
We started out our show by saying, we're money experts.
We're money experts.
Hi, my name is Alasius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin, and
we're money experts.
Totally. You know, the thing about it, I love that we always get shit about it. Well, they're experts. I'm like, how did they become experts? They started calling themselves experts. That's what they did. None of these people have financial education or background. None of them have taken any coursework. None of them have ever had a client.
Nor did their previous work experience fall under the range of anything financial.
No education, none of that. They've never held licenses. They never had clients. They've never had, they just do their Dave's little spiel. And Dave doesn't have any personal finance background. His finance background was in real estate. So already opening with some bullshit.
Wow, we made it far.
Yeah, we made it 23 seconds.
Culture, current events, and money.
And typically, we block out the haters. But today, we are choosing to respond. Will we take the high road? Only time will tell.
We are bringing in the haters for this episode.
Say, do it for the plot.
That's right.
Do it for the story. Do they still? I don't know. Have you heard that?
Do it for the plot? No. So useful, though.
Thank you.
They have the energy for it because we don't always have the energy for that. But we're going to talk about some of our most controversial topics when it comes to money. People love to hate on them, and that's okay.
The biggest criticism.
Okay, controversial, I think, is an interesting word. But we'll get into what's controversial.
And while we're talking about the hate, we're sipping on a what, George?
This is a mocktail today, and it is called the Roy Rogers, which is why I said it's fun for the whole family, in case you're...
Oh, my God. Okay, so let's...
Wait, what's in a Roy Rogers?
I don't have a clue.
I know what Shirley Temple is, but I don't know what a Roy Rogers is other than like a Coke or something.
Yeah, let's see. Let's look at a Roy Rogers cocktail. It's a non-alcoholic mixed drink made with cola and grenadine syrup and cherries.
Oh, so it's basically the same thing as a Shirley Temple, but a Shirley Temple uses like more a Sprite sort of thing.
Right.
And Roy Rogers is like the cola version.
Right.
Well, right now for this happy hour at the moment, I'm drinking lavender tea again.
Right.
It's a black tea, and if I need this happy hour to be a little bit happier, maybe I'll switch to something that's a real happy hour beverage, and
all right.
I'll drink wine.
All right, so it's the Smart Money Happy Hour. I want to clarify this, right? And we have two people that are it's questionable how smart they are, claiming to be experts in finance. So they're not, right? And they're drinking non-alcoholic Coke. They're just drinking Coke with
So
grenadine.
basically, they're missing all of the components. Well, 2 of the 3 components. They're missing the smart and the happy hour part of it. Money will make an appearance in some way.
Well, they won't.
So I'll give them credit for the money part, but not the smart.
Right.
And the happy hour is not.
It's not a happy hour. It's just, I mean, it's great. Here we go. Yeah. All the way down the rabbit hole with these two. Jesus. So all of this is already bullshit. Come on, guys.
You're wondering? The kids
great.
can enjoy
It's
this
fun.
one
It
too.
kind of it's like a cherry Coke almost.
I feel like a kid again.
Yeah, it's
Okay. They're killing me with the banter here. I'm not saying we have the best banter, but Jesus Christ.
Well, I don't know.
To fill in the gaps.
About what they're drinking, but I'm not going to sit there and talk for 30 seconds about my tea. Unless you don't want me to. Tell me in the comments. About my tea for 30 seconds.
Well, the other problem, like, just so everybody knows, part of the reason our banter sometimes seems stunted is because Lacey's on the other side of the country. So sometimes there's a delay, and it looks like we're talking over each other, but really it's a delay. It's not. We're not sitting in the same room where it would be.
I fill some big shoes, so you'll see him for a few episodes here on Smart Money Happy Hour.
That's right. Okay, so for the listeners, George,
man, they are really sticking to the sound sheets, aren't they? Read it step by step by step. Let's get into it. What is Ramsey? Let's just go to that. What is Ramsey? Man,
come see us.
Come see us. Yeah.
So Ramsey has a lot of different branches. It started as really like a personal finance money company started by your dad, Dave Ramsey, helping people get out of.
What was that?
I said, "Oh, Jan, let's not hear the history of Ramsey Solutions."
I wasn't sure what they were going to say. What
Strong enough for that.
this is? What is this? This is.
What is Ramsey? There's this whole section currently labeled "What is Ramsey" as you're moving across that cursor.
I know.
I will literally have to poke my eyes out if we have to listen to "What is Ramsey."
Do you want to go to? Let's go to my story real quick. Yeah, I didn't know they were going to do 3 minutes on how great her father is.
Yeah, I can't even.
Yeah, I guess you got to kiss the ring now.
I mean, listen, she could love her father, good family, whatever, but I don't need to hear it.
Yeah, well, it is a little bit of the get on your knees and kiss the ring shit. I mean, bow to the king kind of shit, right? Because you got to do it because he's funding it.
We really do truly live out what we talk about too.
And Rachel, you know my story, but for those that don't, I put a video on my new YouTube channel about this, how I went from broke to millionaire. That was my story. When I started here at Ramsey Solutions 10 years ago, I was an intern, a temp, got an entry-level job, and I was $40,000 in consumer debt. I got out of that. I got an emergency fund. I started investing. I bought a house, and my wife and I paid off our house a few years back. So we followed it, and we became net worth millionaires over 10 years of following.
Yeah, but a lot of that's in his house. And I wonder how much he owes on the house. But just to give you a sense of this, just because this just cracks me up when they do this shit. So 10 years, if you wanted to go from, I'm sorry, zero.
Negative 40.
Oh, he was negative.
Negative 40.
I was just going to go do 0 to $1 million just to save that amount of money. Let's see. Let's say you were getting 10% interest even, just to be nice. What would you have to put in? He'd have to save $62,000, $63,000 a year almost. So this is not because they were doing smart things with their budget. This is because he was making that kind of money at some point.
Well, also, if there's a bunch of it in his house,
yeah.
Did he buy a house for $100,000 in a neighborhood that maybe became up and coming, and it became worth like 400,000. You know what I mean?
Well, he bought that. I think we covered this. He bought the house after he got married. They bought it with cash, so he bought it in whatever 2019 or 2020. So it hasn't built a lot of equity at this point. Plus they're in Tennessee. I don't know how booming of a market it is in Tennessee. I can't imagine there's a shit ton of people moving to Tennessee.
But if it's like Nashville area, that really could be.
Yeah, it could be, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you know what? Here's where I will give him credit. Having paid off his home that young, regardless of how much he bought it for and how much it's appreciated.
Well, he bought it in cash.
Well, but I don't think he bought it in cash, but it seems like he paid it off.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's the phrasing he used, so I'm assuming it literally, but who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the other thing is you got to remember too, in Tennessee, in the town they're in, where pretty much Ramsey Solutions is probably the biggest business there, the biggest taxpayer there. So his wedding was actually free. He didn't pay for his whatever $20-something thousand wedding when he got married. Wow. That was a big article, and part of it is because it was a competition where the I guess it was the wedding planner was giving away a free wedding as a promotion thing, and of course the guy from Ramsey wins because she wants the publicity. So it's not like he won that fair and square. Part of this is where they're at. They're probably getting a lot of perks, right? Just because of who they work for. So it's kind of you kind of got to take these things with a grain of salt.
These principles. So I'm just like, I'm normal. I have immigrant parents. Like, I don't have trust funds. You can do this too. And so that's what I love, helping people understand, believe, and then put into action.
For sure. Yep. And my story I was born the year my parents filed for bankruptcy. And so I'm kind of that second generation coming from parents that were very intentional with teaching us about money and growing up knowing. And so now as adults, and being married 13 years with 3 kids, like truly having the dignity to make day-to-day decisions with our own money and choosing this path.
This is so spun. I mean, if you're going to tell the story,
tell this. My story is that I basically don't have one.
Right. My life story is my father was the son of a very wealthy realtor. And then my father became a realtor, and then he loaned out way too much money, screwed it all up. When the law changed and you could no longer flip houses like that, he lost all his money. And we've speculated that we don't know that he was doing this, but the reason they were giving out a lot of those loans was to push black people out of their neighborhoods. Not saying that's what Dave was doing, but that's what the banks were giving loans for. That's why that law was passed. And I know it was a big popular thing in Tennessee to push black people out of their neighborhoods and gentrify them for the banks. So that's maybe part of what caused her dad to go bankrupt. And she was born the year they went bankrupt. Boo-hoo. But it's not like, but he's still the son of a wealthy realtor. And then he wrote his stupid little book and pushed it at the church and started teaching lessons. So it's not like, and he didn't have any background in personal finance. The church just pushed him to do it. And I mean, and then what? And then, what was his big magic story that boosted him into the arena of radio and marketing and all that stuff? There was a local radio station that broadcasted statewide, and they didn't have enough disc jockeys to fill spaces. So Dave and 2 other guys, they gave Dave 2 days a week to do his finance show for free. On FM radio, broadcast all across Tennessee. We would kill for that. You know what that would cost us to do that? I mean, it would cost a shit ton of money to get that kind of exposure. Dave got it for free, right? And then one of the guys that was doing the finance show with him on the other days worked for, I think it was Ameriprise maybe, or something like that. It was a big insurance company, and he pushed a lot of what Dave is doing now, right? Because insurance companies were pushing those plans. And then what happens is this guy gets a grant from Ameriprise. Not grant. They just sponsored him and Dave. And him and Dave did this show that was sponsored by Ameriprise that went nationwide. And then Dave, once he had the recognition after a short amount of time, fucking took off and did it on his own so he could pocket all the money. So his origin story is the guy fell back asswards into this. He has no background or training in it, right? His business degree is in real estate, not in finance.
And Rachel's story is that she doesn't have one, and Skippy's story is the steps work, I did them.
Right. Well, Rachel's story is my father fell into his fortune, right, by luck. And I'm just coattailing off that, so I have to suck up to daddy. That's her story. Skippy's story is we don't know where he comes from, what his education is. He keeps that really private, and I'm not going to go digging. But yeah, we don't know anything about him other than he came there and started sucking up to Dave Ramsey, and he's been doing it for 10 years. So he's basically the court jester telling the king how great he is.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we can probably skip past their story part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing else there. So let's get to 7 minutes before they finally get to their most hated financial advice. Jesus Christ. All right. So we got that. I told the story. Easy. Done. Let's move to their most hated financial advice. Jeez.
Of haterade here.
Okay.
And the relentless negative Nancy's out there, because it's time to invite the skeptics into the chat as we discuss our controversial money advice.
Mm-hmm.
You ready?
All right.
You kick us off, Rachel.
I'll go
What's
first.
the number one criticism that you get when it comes to your money advice?
Yeah, the number one hate that I for sure get is when I tell married couples to combine their finances.
The audacity.
People get so
Rachel.
angry with me, George. Oh.
So people are comfortable sharing DNA and a bed.
A baby. That's
How, DNA? I guess sex is like flinging DNA at each other. Get it?
I mean, I guess yeah. I mean, hey baby, want to fling some DNA?
We're gonna fling some DNA, honey.
That is. I mean, if somebody tried to use that as a pickup line on me,
You'd laugh at least.
You know what? They would at least have my attention.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not the way they want my attention, but I would at least laugh. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost as good as, hey, do you want to buy me a drink, take a blood test, and then deflower me? No. Oh, wait. No, and yes.
No, and maybe.
So anyway, yeah, combining finances. I mean, like, okay, so this whole thing, I can tell you, it's gonna be gray area shit where they're saying, no, you have to do it this way. This is the right answer. But really, there's so many variables that go into this that they're not considering. But they don't have to because they're just going from Dave's formula, which he probably stole from somebody else. So, I mean, it is. It's like trying to watch a kid, like the slow kid, stick the square peg into the round hole and can't figure out why it won't go in there. You know, it's a little bit what watching this is like. Because she's going to bitch about all these people hate me for it and they criticize me. And it's like, they don't hate you. They just think it's a stupid proclamation because it doesn't factor anything in. That's it. Nobody hates you, Rachel. We just don't think very highly of you.
Not an account that holds money.
no.
They go, not on my watch. Don't tread on me, Rachel.
That's right. Oh yeah.
What's behind
And
that?
I'll say a lot of it probably comes from a lot of pain. You know, someone's been taken advantage of in a divorce situation, right? They've come from a family history where there's a lot of brokenness financially and they really feel the need to protect themselves. Like, I do think that it comes from a level of probably trueness in their story. But even with that, though, we just see when you are married, when you combine everything and say, we are one and we're going to work as the same team, you just win with money faster. You really do. And then.
But where is she getting that from? That's what I love is they make these assertions, but where do you get that from? That if we combine our finances, we're just going to win with money faster somehow magically. I can tell you right now, just simple fact, most financial advisors, they're not going to recommend combining all your finances, right? And the reason for that is because it's one, it makes it difficult if for some reason there's a dissolution of the relationship, right? You guys break up, get divorced, whatever, right? The other thing about it too is it just tends to cause more problems in a lot of relationships, because what ends up happening is if all the money is shared in the same account or accounts, like let's say we were married hypothetically, so I go out and I spend $1,000 on a suit, you're going to want to know, why did you spend $1,000 on a suit? Right? And you're going to be pissed I did it without asking or having a discussion about it.
Especially if at the exact same time I'm going and spending XYZ amount on something.
Right.
And we didn't manage to call each other about it, and we do it at the same time, and bouncy can very easily happen, even among the most responsible of people, because, like, it's either that or you're calling and texting each other all the time over these purchases.
Right. Well, but it's little things, so it causes a loss of autonomy, right? Because, like, what if I wanted, what if I want to have a nice lunch one day, right? And I go out and spend.
Surprise me and take me somewhere awesome for my birthday.
Right.
How are you going to be able to buy me that awesome trip for my birthday?
Well,
if I can see all of your money.
Right. And that's the thing. So I'll tell you this, and this is why, I mean, they don't teach, like, you don't have to do it this way or that way. It depends on the couple. Really, it does. What's best for them. But when couples ask me, what do you think about that? I always tell them, well, look, if you combine all the money, that's fine. But what ends up happening inevitably is you then secretly open up another account or you hide cash. Because that way, if you want to go to the movies or something and just take a little me time, you don't have to explain it or have a discussion about it. Because there's times when it's like, do you really want your significant other knowing where you are and what you're doing and what you're spending money on all the time? Do you want to have a discussion about every single penny? I mean,
I don't really care if they basically know where I am all the time, but it doesn't need to be down to a T. And I don't care if they basically know what I'm spending money on, but I sure don't want to be like, by the way, I'm getting myself lunch right now. Like, please, really?
Right.
That's
right.
It's tedious.
Right. Well, then it's like if I want to play hooky from work and go golf, I don't feel like I should have to explain that later. I mean, if I lose my job because of it, yeah, then I have to explain it later. But I mean,
I knew that to you, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm not married to you, but as your fake wife, you're fake in trouble for that.
Yeah. That would be different. But I mean, if I just want to go golf, I don't want to have to, why is there a charge for golf on the credit card? So I'll just show this because this is just an article from the Atlantic, and they ask a bunch of different financial advisors, what it is, and they talk about was it Dave Ramsey dismissed arguments for keeping separate accounts, right? So they have that whole thing, right? But respondents to the survey were split pretty much 50-50, right, on the whole thing. And Suze Orman, who I know you like, she would never have just one joint account. So she believes in a hybrid method, which is what most people advise. Right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I do think having a joint account makes sense if you're in a long-term partnership, but I think it's really rough if that's the only account you're going to have.
Right.
I'm kind of into hybrid too.
Well, and I can tell you, I showed you the article, but if you read the article, most advisors are just, hybrid is probably the safest method. You have some of your money, but then you guys split, the bills and other stuff, and that goes into the joint checking savings, right? We're saving for a down payment on a house. You put it in the joint account, right? So it's a joint venture. You do it together, right? But you should have some of your own money so you don't feel like you have to explain everything all the time, or everything has to be a discussion, because it can, especially what you'll find, and this was the thing was, there was a study that maybe she'll get into it here in a second. Let's watch some more of this and let's see if she gets into it before I go.
Actually, let me jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me jump in. So I don't want this to sound exactly like a previous episode because we talked about this extensively,
Right.
but I'm going to make sure I say it in both places because they don't like to address things like this
No.
over at Ramsey, from my experience. God forbid you're in a position where one spouse has to leave the other one because they feel that they are in an unsafe situation.
Right.
If all of the money is in one place, they can be held hostage financially by the other person.
Right.
And, you see that happening a lot. Were marriages, however many decades ago, really so much happier? Or was it that usually the woman at that time didn't have control or custody of her own money, and even if she had her own account, her husband could just go to the bank and say, hey, that's my wife's account, and drain the thing,
Yeah. Right.
That's not necessarily something that happens all the time, but it happens to enough people for that to be a huge concern. If you've got all of your money dumped in one spot,
Right.
that's very risky.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the big plot points of the book Dolores Claiborne, where she murders her husband. Well, she arranges him to die, basically. He kind of kills himself. But the whole thing about it is that you're right. I mean, because that's the thing, is they're talking about this joint thing, and they talk about that a little bit in the Atlantic article. They don't get into the darker side of it, which is, oh yeah, that was the normal in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It's like through most of the 80s. And I'm like, yeah, because it was almost impossible for women to get jobs that made any real money back then. And a lot of times, like you said, women couldn't get bank accounts unless their husbands said they could.
Even if the woman was the only one on it, they would really just allow her husband to withdraw from those accounts. They were not kept private.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. So just weird stuff like that. I mean, that's why, like, when you talk about like gay couples, especially like lesbians back then, I mean, most of them lived in the city, because a lot of times in the city, the banks wouldn't ask you to bring in your husband because they don't have time for that shit. But if you lived in like a rural area, it was difficult because the bank would be like, well, did your husband say, well, I'm not married? Well, are you a widow? Or, so you'd have to lie. Right? I mean, but yeah, let's see where she goes, because they did cite a study, and it was the last time they talked about this, and it was really stupid because they didn't read the study. They never read.
And on top of that, or underneath that even, is
making these faces.
What was that?
You keep pausing on her making these faces.
She just makes faces all the time. Like,
I mean, I make faces too, but hers always looks sort of panicked.
Yeah. She's kind of like a little girl in the way she acts.
Is a level of intimacy that is built when you are fully transparent with your spouse on every part of marriage, let me say, which is very scary.
Sure.
And not always fun. But the more you are of that in marriage, I just think the richer your marriage is. So I still push for it, because I think on a tactical level, it's easier to handle money when you're working out of one account. But then it does something to the relationship when you say, you're not going to, you pay this bill, I pay that bill, and you're acting almost like roommates.
It's very petty.
It is. And you end up running on these two separate tracks versus saying, hey, if we combine everything and we're one and we're working as a team. Somebody gave us this picture years early on in our marriage, and I loved it. They're like, if you ever have an issue, put the issue out there and like stand beside each other, right? Metaphorically, but it's like that's the issue out there. It's not you, and don't put it in the middle of you. Put it out there. And when you look at money like that, it's like, yeah, if you're a married couple, like those are our problems. Like we want to fund retirement and there's not enough in there. That's the problem.
Yeah, that was. Did you understand that? I didn't. I
don't want to seem like an idiot here, but what was she talking about?
So you have a problem, so you put it out there, and then you stand together metaphorically, and then the problem's out there, and it's not.
Is this her way of saying work together?
Yeah.
Is that the whole?
I think that's all it is. Yeah.
Work together.
Let me give you a really vague, hypothetical, metaphorical situation where it's a problem. I'm not going to describe the problem or use anything metaphorically to represent the problem. Right? Like I would have like look, you can't slay the dragon alone. You guys got to do it as a team. That's a much more apt metaphor as opposed to that's just
so. I worked with a married couple, and I'm not even certain they actually had a joint account. The way they put everything on paper when they would show it to me had things sort of separate.
Right.
So they were operating from separate accounts, I think exclusively, from what I could see. I never made them show me bank accounts. They just did budget sheets and such.
Right.
But they really, even before coming to me, communicated well about money. They stood together and faced the problems. They kind of had to, because they had to have the bills paid, and they were being paid from these two accounts, so they actually had to have conversations about it.
Right.
So my point in bringing this up is they make it sound like if you have two separate accounts, you would not be communicating about money. I think if you are sharing bills, whether the money's in one account or separate accounts, you probably have to have conversations about those bills getting paid, unless one person is literally just not transacting anywhere.
Right. There has to be a conversation. That's the big key. I mean, at some point you have to discuss it. You can't be working at opposite ends all the time. Right?
But they're making it sound like if you have separate accounts, you clearly are not communicating about money because the accounts are separate, so you clearly don't talk.
No,
that's ridiculous.
No,
that doesn't make sense.
You're still talking about things. It's just that I have a little bit of mine and you have some of yours, and then we have some autonomy where we don't have to explain shit all the time.
Right.
Right.
You don't have to tell me about that tie you bought.
Yeah, I mean that would irritate me if I had to explain every penny. Anyway, let's get back to this. But the idea though that here's a metaphor about a problem, right? But I don't use anything as a metaphor for the problem. I just don't get her. Her mind is working on it's either working in 3-dimensional chess or it's just a hamster on a wheel with a asthma problem.
Well, get that hamster inhaler. Okay.
All right.
Or we're drowning in debt. That's the problem. And so how do you and I together do that? I mean, not you and I, George. Sure. We're not married. We're married to other people. But do you know what I'm saying?
But we have joint bank accounts with our spouses. And
yes.
I thought this is normal. People don't do this. And then I found out. People well, we have one account that's for the shared bills, and we have our savings, and then we each have our personal accounts. So it's my money. I get to say what. And so then I went, well, why don't you talk about the trust issues you have with each other? If she's going, you can't spend your money that way. Have a conversation about it. Instead of brushing it under separate rugs.
That's it too, right? So an issue comes up and it's we'll fix the issue by separating so we don't have to deal with the issue. And in marriage, George, deal with the issue. Yes. Trust me, deal with the issue. Go in there.
Okay. This is just... So this is your marriage has to be this way and you have to do it this way. That's why you're getting so much kickback on this. Not because that's inappropriate. For some people it is. but because it's not for everybody. Because I got to tell you right now, if that were the case, I'd never get married. Because the whole point would be, I don't want you knowing what I do all the fucking time. I'm sorry, I'm an only child. I have to have some autonomy. Right?
So if we're fake married,
Yeah.
and you want to go buy that damn tie or whatever,
Right.
it's not you buying a tie that's an issue for me. There might not actually be an issue.
Right.
But it could be an issue if having to like text or call each other every time we wanted to make a personal transaction out of a joint account, that could just be really frustrating and irritating. Not that you buying a tie is a problem.
Well, right. And here's the thing too is,
which is making it sound like, though, you know, that it's about controlling how the other person spends the money. Maybe it's just about like being able to do certain spending things without always having to call each other about it.
right.
I wouldn't want to call you because I was like, oh, I wasn't really planning on having like, you know, a lunch out with the girls this week, but after this thing we did, we decided we wanted to whatever, and so I know it's gonna mess, you know, like I'm not doing all that. I'm just gonna use my account and
yeah, I get it. Yeah. And that just makes it easier. And then the other thing is that I would kind of point out here is what they're missing to this whole equation, which George actually hit on and then just tripped face first right over it, which was, well, if we've got the separate accounts and stuff, and he's getting all judgmental about that, he's like, well, what's the trust issue? And it's like, well, first off, it's none of your fucking business what's going on in my marriage, right? I don't ask you about, you know, how's your wife in bed? I mean, Jesus, none of my business. The other thing about it is, well, dude, just because we combine accounts doesn't mean we instantly trust each other. And that's the problem here is they seem to think that if we combine accounts, somehow that'll make the relationship better or easier. And what they're not factoring in is, for a lot of people, it doesn't.
Or that separate accounts automatically means that there is a trust issue.
Right.
It really could just be a lack of frustration issue. It could be a trust issue, but people with joint accounts could have trust issues too.
Yeah.
And like you said, joining them doesn't solve that.
No, because then people just start hiding money from each other. Yeah.
Right. People having separate accounts really just might be an organizational issue, not a trust issue. A lack of frustration issue, you know?
Well, here's the
thing. I also don't want you calling me every time you bought a tie or went out
to
lunch with your coworker or whatever. Like, I mean, later tell me how your day was, but like, I really don't need the blow by blow all day long. That would make me crazy.
Right. If you're out with your girlfriends and you guys want to go to the strip club and you blow $100, I don't want to have to be like, where'd that money go? You know, I'd rather you just come home and tell me I had a great time. I don't need to know.
You went down Jose's G-Street.
That's right. I don't care where you got your appetite, honey. Just come home for dinner. That's all I care about.
Oh my God. Okay, let's go back to them.
Well, real quick. So part of what justifies this is they use this study, and it's not really a study. It's a study of studies. Right,
From strip clubs to studies.
Right.
We've got range over here. Okay.
Right. But it's just 3 business professors or doctors who are doing pooling finance and relationship satisfaction. And they go through it. So couples that make enormous life-altering decisions, they go through this study, and I'm just going to sum it up for you real quick. It's not definitive or a real great study of studies, but it's kind of like a jumping off point. But they find that people that have pooled their money tend to be in happier relationships, less likely to break up. But there's no causal effect, and they admit that in this, right? And in fact, they admit it's probably more likely that people that are in good relationships happen to just pool their money because they're already in a good relationship. There's no point in not worrying about it. So I just want to go to the concluding remarks here because this is important. This is where she screws it up and why they get so much pushback on this. The decision of how to pool finance is one that every couple must make, guided by independency, blah, blah, blah. They did their hypothesis, and they said, we hypothesized that showed performing finances is associated with increased relationship satisfaction and longevity, especially for those who experience their financial resources are scarce. This was important. Poor people, right, like couples that are low income, that pool their money together, do better. Why? Because they probably have to survive. And so there is a lot more dependence.
It also said in that conclusion is associated with their relationship satisfaction, not causes.
Yeah.
Or caused by, actually. It just says associated.
Well, but here's the thing is, so they used this actual study. I got this because they cited it on the show. They didn't read it. Clearly, they never read. But I want to point out the main focus of this study, they say here at the end, it is our hope that by identifying who is likely to benefit most from pooling finances and why, research in this area can help couples both decide how to organize their finances to maximize relationship quality and ultimately improve their well-being. So what they're saying is we argue about it in finance, but there's no definitive answer because there's no real definitive research. And even when you do the definitive research, you find that like couples where they did the 10-year study in England, couples that were pooling their finances were happy, but the same couple 6 years later no longer pooled their finances and were unhappy. Well, is it because they unpooled their finances that they became unhappy, or is it that they became unhappy and then they unpooled their finances? Plus the big flaw in this is like they'll ask, do you guys pool your money together or keep it completely separate? What they don't ask is, do you guys have like a hybrid method? So a lot of people are answering, yeah, we pool all our money together, even though they're not. Because there's no middle ground in that question. So they're just, like I said, it's misattributed advice. It's advice that comes from nowhere with no backing. It's just their opinion.
And again, they didn't read the article. How much you want to bet on their next most hated advice? There's some situation where they didn't read the article.
Yeah, it's usually is. So we'll wrap up the combining finances thing here real quick.
Yeah, I don't want to listen to them talk about combining finances anymore. I'm over it.
All right, let's move to the next one.
This one went viral.
What was that?
I said we have heard them rattle on about that so much.
Yeah. Well, we'll go to the next one here.
Like millions of views on me saying that it is cheaper to eat at home than eating out. And my stat was like average cost of a meal, $13 eating out. Average cost of a meal at home, $4. And so I went,
Okay. We got to pause this because. Yeah. So he got it from this Forbes article. I think it was. Was it a Forbes article? Yeah. Here it is. So here's the article from Forbes. And here's how much you save by cooking at home, right? And this is where he gets his $4. Let's see if I can zoom that in. There we go. Get out of here, ad. This is where he gets his $4, $13 figure, right? From this home cooking, $4.31, meal kit $12.53, restaurant was $20.37. Now, this is the thing. He didn't read the article. You called it. This $20.37, this is ordering food delivered to your house. So you're paying for the cooking of the food, the delivery, blah, blah, blah. What this is, this article by Forbes, this is what's called native advertising, okay? So native advertising is when news shows will have an advertiser on the show and make it look like it's a news segment, or they'll have an article from an advertiser that looks like news, but what it really is advertising. And this is advertising for a company called Wellio. And Wellio is no longer in business. And what did Wellio do? They connected you with meal kits. So they're trying to show you the benefit of a meal kit is cheaper than, going to the restaurant. So there's a bunch of these where where they're advertising from companies that do this. They're trying to sell you these meal kits and stuff. And the catch to this is they're doing it average price per serving, right? Well, servings at a restaurant are much larger than servings at a grocery store. That's just a fact. So there's that factor in there. So this is all bullshit. And in fact, the company that did this advertising article for them is no longer allowed to publish on Forbes, to do anything on Forbes. Now, don't get me wrong, Forbes is okay, but you have to be careful what you read on Forbes because you can buy articles on Forbes. I get emails from Forbes all the time like, well, you're an entrepreneur who owns a few businesses. We can do a whole article on you about how brilliant you are and how successful you are. And all you have to do is pay us X. Right? So I'm paying them for advertising to make it look like they're writing an article on me. And how great I am. So, you froze again. There you go. So yeah. So that's all it is it's just fake advertising. Now, the other thing he misses here is, here's an interesting article I found from U.S. News. Is fast food cheaper than cooking at home? And the answer is yes and no. More often, yes, right? And they give an example here. For instance, at the time of this writing, you can get a McDonald's McChicken for $1.79. If you wanted to replicate that at home without spending more than $1.79, there's simply no way you're going to be able to make that chicken sandwich at home for a similarly cheap price. If for no other reason than chicken breasts typically come in packages. Unless you go to a butcher, and then it's even more expensive. When you're paying for several chicken breasts and not just one, you'd also have to buy the bread and lettuce, and so you've just spent $10 to make a chicken sandwich. Right? So there are situations where eating at home is more expensive, which is what I think is kind of ironic. He froze again. Yeah. So anyway, so I think that's funny, but the other thing is, like, it depends too where you're shopping. If I'm shopping at Whole Foods, it might actually be cheaper to go to the local Chinese restaurant than it is to go to Whole Foods. So he's not factoring in a lot of stuff here. And the data he's taking is from an advertisement. That's not real data. I mean, it's just stuff they put together to make themselves look better. The other thing that this has been an issue is the average American wastes over the average family household wastes like $3,000 or $4,000 in food just in a year, easily. Could be more in different areas. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to the restaurant, I'm not really wasting a lot of the food unless I just don't eat it. But if I buy groceries, I'm going to throw some of that food away. So that's wasted money. So there's just once again, it's a gray area and there's so many factors that they just didn't factor in. And he's explaining why he's right on this. Yeah, generally cooking in is cheaper because you don't have to pay somebody to cook it or serve it. But not if you're wasting a lot of food. Not if you're going to Whole Foods and buying really expensive shit. And it depends on what restaurant you're going to. If I'm going to a food truck, it's probably just as cheap because they're buying their food wholesale. So it's about the same as if I cooked at home. So we'll watch another minute of this. But yeah, this is a stupid one.
Got so mad, and
people got
yeah. Why?
Because of your math? What were they mad at you for?
Because they're like, this guy's in it. When's the last time he went grocery shopping? 1992? Well, bro, you don't even know my grocery shopping game, okay? Don't come at me with that.
Don't come at me.
And so I did a video on my YouTube channel breaking it down. I went shopping. I showed literal receipts from Trader Joe's and Costco and broke it down into servings and went, Look at that. It's under $4 per serving.
Isn't it?
Well, what's the thing is this, though, is you're doing it by the standard servings that they serve at the grocery store, not by the servings they do at a restaurant. Because a lot of times what restaurants will do is they'll inflate the serving size, they'll make it bigger. And the reason is because so when you go factor in, okay, well, how many calories is it, or how much am I getting for my money, right? They can say, well, look, you're actually getting more for your money.
Because this is actually 2 servings or whatever.
Well, right, but if you look at servings at a grocery store, sometimes it's like, servings in like a bag of M&Ms is like it's like a fourth cup of M&Ms. It's not even a bag of M&Ms. Like your standard bag of M&Ms is like 3 or 4 servings probably. By that standard, right? So if you're doing it by serving size, he's actually kind of funny because what he's saying is, okay, well, this is 1 serving, but it's really not what people would normally eat for a meal. It's like a third or a fourth of what they normally eat for a meal. In the chicken breast example, right? Chicken breast at a grocery store, that's just 1 chicken breast. In Oregon, I know for sure, is, you can get it to where they're like 4 or 5 servings because they're big, right? I'm not having 1 serving if I'm not eating a fourth of the chicken breast. Right? So when he does that, it's like, yeah, but when you're getting it at the restaurant, the 1 serving is the chicken breast. Even though that's 4, so you're getting 4 times the amount of food. Right? So it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's just, but it's stupid. And it's one of those things where it's like, unless you're eating out all the time and it's costing you a shit ton of money, how much are you really saving by not eating out?
I don't know. I feel like I save quite a bit of money by avoiding, $10 lunches because I take things that were left over from the previous night, So I think it sort of depends on which meals we're talking about and how often, honestly. Because cooking can be expensive too. You use spices and things like that, and those tend to be expensive. However, you're not using the whole container of it, but you do have to buy the whole container of it.
Right. But
that's also, how are we looking at it here? Are you looking at how much of the spices I actually use in this recipe?
Right.
I mean, that's fair, but I have to buy the whole container, so that week's grocery budget might actually have been higher because I had to buy new spices.
Well, right. And if you're the kind of person that ends up throwing out a lot of food, then that's just wasted money. Right? So I'm buying all these groceries, but then I don't eat all of it, so it goes bad, and then I throw it out. Right? So we're not factoring that cost in here at all. Right? We're also not factoring.
I personally don't tend to throw much out because I plan that pretty carefully, but I do have a lot of people in my life that aren't great at that and end up tossing quite a bit.
Yeah, so, like I said, the average household probably $3,000 or $4,000 a year is what I looked at. But that's just part of it. And then the other thing is, where are you shopping? Because if you're going to Costco and Trader Joe's, then Costco I know for sure is cheap. I've never been to Trader Joe's, but
Trader Joe's, I use Trader Joe's on a regular basis, and it actually is kind of one of the cheaper ways to get organics and things like that.
Yeah, but if you're going to Whole Foods, right, it's going to be a little bit more money.
They don't call it whole paychecks for nothing.
Right.
I mean, I like the quality is really great. That's a great place for quality produce, but you are paying for it,
Right. But I think that's the other thing that with the issue here, it's the quality of food is probably what's costing you the most money. Because if you're getting the really nice ingredients, it's going to cost you more money, even if you're cooking it yourself. And I can just tell you that, I used to live where I lived. There was a farmer's market by my apartment there. It was every Saturday. And so I'd go buy all my produce at the farmer's market and get it wholesale. So I could buy really good stuff direct from the farm, right? And get it for a much lower price than I would at the store. because it doesn't have to go through a middleman.
Right.
Right. But that's a convenient thing to do, right? As opposed to I could have gone to the store and paid twice as much.
Right.
For not as good a head of lettuce. Right. But that's the thing is there's so many little factors in this that, because honestly, I could eat fast food every day for the rest of the year and you could cook at home and my budget would be way lower than yours. But then I'm going to have, then I got to worry about health problems and being overweight and all that shit. Right. I mean, so once again, it's like if it's all about the money, then whatever. But if, I think it's a stupid thing to quibble about because it honestly, it really depends on where you are and what you're buying. Because if we were going to get, like we were going to expensive restaurants every 3 or 4 nights a week, then yeah, we're probably blowing, $600 or $700, $800 a week at restaurants. Now we're talking about, maybe you should cut back on that if you can't really afford it. Right. So, but I think it's just a weird thing to like, he gets so fucking emotional about it. It's like, it's such a stupid thing to get emotional about. All right, let's skip to the next one. Emergency funds. Okay. Get your opinion on this.
Actually,
Science. Hey, here's my
why is that advice? What part of it? We haven't listened to it yet. I'm curious what part of the advice is hated.
I think hated is the wrong word. I think I don't agree with you. And a lot of it is because this shit the thing about it is they take it personally because they have, like you've told me many times before, they have their formula that you have to fit into. And if you don't fit into the formula, then it's wrong. And they don't want to hear any evidence that might disagree with them. Right? So it's very blinders on when they do this. So they think it's, oh, you hate us because you're disagreeing with us. And it's like, no, we're disagreeing with you because it's a gray area and you're making a definitive statement about a very gray issue.
Right.
Like
you're saying, do it this way when it's like, well, that's a good way to do it, but there are other good ways to do it. Like, it's not just that.
And see, I don't even know if it's a good way. It's a way. It might not be the appropriate.
Thinking about the emergency savings, I wouldn't say that their advice on it's bad.
Well, you should have an emergency savings, absolutely. But let's see what their quibble is with it. Their quibble with their audience.
Challenge to any of you who still use a credit card: try using a debit card for 30 days and then track how much you spend differently. And I guarantee it's going to be less.
All right, up next, George, we have the $1,000 starter emergency fund. People get very mad about this because they say $1,000 is not enough.
So this is the first step in the Ramsey baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby step 1, save $1,000 in a starter emergency fund. Every other dime.
You were going to say something?
It isn't enough. That is, I agree with their audience. I mean, I think it partly depends on where you live. You and I live in cities, and the cost of living is higher. So, like, I live in New York City, and $1,000 won't cover my rent. If I had something happen where, like I was sick and I missed a paycheck because I didn't have PTO and whatever, $1,000 actually would not cover most people's rent here.
Mm-mm.
Unless you just like rent a room, in an apartment with a bunch of people, which some people do.
Right.
But most people here, even in that situation, aren't paying under $1,000.
Right.
So I like their general idea, but I think the $1,000 being like a definitive, again, the one way to do it thing, the definitive thing is kind of one size fits all, as opposed to somebody in New York City maybe needs it to be double that,
right?
Depending on your living situation,
right? And this is where I depart really heavily, like the combining finances thing. Whatever, it depends on who you are, what your relationship's like. The eating out thing depends on your search situation, right? Like if you're real good, like Lacey and I are really good about, I know since college, we've been really good about buying food, cooking food. We usually, like I shop usually for dinner the day of. I'll just stop by the grocery store on the way home. That way I'm not wasting food, you know. But we were really poor college students, so we learned how to do that shit because otherwise you starve. But because I've had those nights where it's just rice and tuna fish is all you got. I mean, I still like that though. But I'm gonna listen to him.
Yeah, my friend, it was rice and hot dogs. And
Rice and hot dogs. Yep.
rice and hot dogs. Like, gosh, whenever she would say that, it just made me sort of feel sort of gaggy. You know, I was like, oh, rice and hot dogs, that's rough.
Well, I remember my friend, his dad gave him some deer meat because he got it from a friend of his who hunted, and we didn't have anything else for food, and we were broke, right? And so I made stir fried rice with deer meat, and it was terrible.
Oh, was it? I was going to say that could be really delicious.
Well,
But no. it
well,
was
no.
not.
If you know how to cook deer meat, but it's
Which you don't.
it's
and
yeah,
I've had no experience with. Yeah.
it's super gamey.
You're a pretty good cook, but yeah, you.
Oh,
I think you had a way better chance of that growing up in the middle.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. You broke up there, yeah. But yeah, it's not like cooking a chicken, right? Or cooking a steak. I mean, it's not bread to be eaten. Anyway, he's gonna elaborate and double down against the point you just made about $1,000 is it's not supposed to be enough, and it's usually enough. I mean, they're going to contradict.
Well, I understand they don't consider it a fully funded emergency. My suggestion of like someone in New York City maybe needs it to be a couple grand.
Right.
I'm still even on the same page with them as though that's sort of a starter training wheels thing, not your fully funded emergency savings. I'm still saying the training wheels might need to be a little different in different places.
Right. Anyway, let's listen to him real quick and just.
Time other than your buffer in your checking account should go towards paying off debt.
Yes.
And people freak out.
Yes. And so, listen, the $1,000 emergency fund, honestly, it's not meant to be enough. Like, it's not. Like, it will not cover everything. And we know that. Like, we know that. So what do? Well, you pause the debt snowball if you're in baby step 2 to go and fix the emergency when it happens.
If you have an emergency over $1,000.
Over $1,000.
Which we found most emergencies actually are under $1,000.
Yes.
In your mind, you spiral until.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to depart from them, because you're right. It's, emergencies are not the same everywhere, and they're going to do the whole $400 thing, right? And here's a quick article. Just a locksmith can cost you $400 if you get locked out of your house. They talk about, unable to have 500. Most people don't have that. So yeah, there's $1,000 is a good place to start, right? But car trouble is a big issue. The other thing that they don't factor in is they did a study recently, and the average American, just in the last 2 years, spends about almost $2,000. It's like $1,800 or something, just on home repair. And the reason that's gone up is because climate change does a lot more wear and tear to your property.
Right.
So, like, I know in Oregon we had the big heat shield where it was, over 110 degrees here. With the humidity here, it was impossible. But a lot of people, like, the siding on their house melted. Street signs were melting. Right? So you got to replace all that. So this idea that $1,000 covers, it doesn't cover even the average. And that's just home repair. That's not other shit. Like, I had to have dental surgery. Didn't see that coming. And my insurance didn't cover, a big portion of it. So that's $6,000 I got to have. Right? So here's where I quibble with them, because their whole thing is, well, look, you do the $1,000, then you start paying off. I'll throw all your money at your debts. Right? So here's my big quibble with that is, okay, I'm doing that. I'm starting to pay off my debts. And then an emergency happens. Right? And they're like, oh, well, then just pause this paying off the debts and pay off the emergency. And it's like, well, wait a second. I don't have anything saved. So if I don't have Oh, bless you. Yeah. So if I don't have, like my situation where I have to have, you have to have $6,000, right? Well, if I only have $1,000, where do I get the other $5,000 from? And if I'm
More debt.
right, or get it, right? So what am I doing? I'm either taking out a loan or I'm taking out credit. Bless you, man. Lacey's getting allergies. So, but that's my thing is, so now what happens is now I'm taking out more debt. So now I'm stuck in this cycle where I never have enough money to cover the debt because I didn't save it in advance. And now I can't really pay off my debt. I'll wait for you to come back.
I'm just dying over here a little bit. Oh God. Hopefully I don't have the plague.
Yeah.
There are teachers that are out with the plague, so.
Oh God. Yeah. So this is my big quibble with them on these kinds of advice, and they do give other advice. Part of my problem with the whole throwing all your money at your debt is you don't have any cash for a war chest in case you have an emergency. And just somebody who's been a business owner for the last 12 years, 10 years, you always have to have money to pay for shit. And if you don't have it, then it could ruin your business. You'll lose to a competitor. You'll lose that big client. It could have made you even more money. I mean, you really cripple yourself. And then when something happens, now all of a sudden I owe $6,000 on this thing. I didn't have it saved, right? I didn't have a proper emergency fund to cover it. So now I'm taking out more debt and just digging myself in deeper. And so what happens is the reason I quibble with them is what you basically done is create a spiral where you can't get out of it. It's just quicksand. And I've seen it happen to so many people that's like, well, but Dave Ramsey said do this. And it's like, yeah, that's why you're broke. Because you never could get out of it. So we'll watch them try to justify this a little bit more, and then they go into the next thing.
So like, well, what if the HVAC goes out? Sure, that's a possibility.
Right.
More realistically, it's like, oh, I got a flat tire. I got to pay for a $300 tire.
Figure it out. Yes. But that urgency, though, is one of the things that kind of fuels people to get out of debt faster. So
because you realize, oh, I'm not safe. If I owe $60,000 and I have
Yes.
$10,000 in my bank account, I'm not safe.
And the other point of the $1,000 emergency fund.
Well, wait a second. See, that's the other quibble is how are you not safe? You owe $60,000, you make the payments.
What they're talking about is that if you only have $1,000 sitting there
Mhm.
and you've got the $60,000 in debt, $1,000 makes you feel unsafe. And I agree that makes you feel unsafe, but they have decided that's a good thing.
Right.
And that motivates people to pay their debt more quickly. I have to tell you, I have had teachers, professors in the past, I'm thinking of specific people in my mind that have tried to use fear as a way to motivate me. And the truth of the matter is, I shut down.
Yeah. Most people do.
Fear is not going to be effective for me. It's going to shut me down.
Right.
You know?
But that's my point is that and then it's going to like you said, the fear thing is going to contradict the next thing they're about to say, which is just there's no coherent logic to what they're doing, right? They're trying to say there's a psychological reason for this, but that it doesn't make sense with the other things they're doing. It's all cattywampus back ass words. But my whole thing is the emergency savings is what is appropriate for you based on your situation. Right. The other thing about it is okay, if you only have the 1,000 and then you have something big comes up that you have to pay for, well, now you're having to take out more debt to pay for it. So you've just created a bigger issue. Right. And you dig yourself in deeper because you don't have the liquid money. So they have an issue with understanding what liquidity is. They don't really know. They think paying the debt is better And in a lot of situations, it's just not, because it makes you unsafe because you don't have the cash.
Is we want you to do it quickly, because this is the first step in a process of change for you. And if you really do choose to engage in this, we do, as the teachers in it, like, we want you to have a quick win. And if we're like, you got to save $10,000, you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever to do that first step. So getting that first step done to move on to pay off debt, there's a behavior change that occurs that is really big when it comes to winning with money, you guys.
Momentum is key.
Yes, behavior is a big part of this. It's not just the numbers and the math.
Okay, so like I said, we want you to have that win, get to that $1,000, right? But then we want you to pay off your debts, so you're scared. So we want to motivate you, and then we want to kick you in the balls for no reason. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, first step, get $1,000 in emergency savings, right? Step one. We could say that. Nothing wrong with that. Give them the easy win. They feel good about it. You did it. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save a little bit less and then pay some more off over here. Or, we're going to continue to save in that while we pay this stuff off over here, right? That's a plan. And it still works. And it's probably safer in the long run, as opposed to, okay, now you have your 1,000, all your money has to go to your debt. And then, something happens. Now you're taking out more debt to pay for it. So now you're back to square one. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? It's stupid. It gets to that point where it's just dumb. And it doesn't factor in any risk or liquidity issues or any of that shit. It's just moronic.
It's that momentum.
So it takes most people 30 days on average for baby step one.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. If you can do something in under 30
that's probably not true.
30 days, you're like, I'll keep going.
Oh yeah. I mean,
right.
Sell stuff, work out, do what you got to do. Get that $1,000 quick.
Love it. Okay, next up, Rachel, on the controversial advice list, paying off debt from smallest to largest balance and ignoring the interest rate.
I know.
The audacity.
Yes. So people.
Okay. So why don't you explain this real quick? The debt thing. They're talking about the snowball method.
Oh, how it works?
Yeah. Well, there are three methods.
There are three methods. The one that they are into is the idea that you list out all of your debts in order of balance, and you pay off the thing with the smallest balance with your extra available money in your budget. Once that's paid off, you take what that minimum payment was and all the excess money and start attacking the next smallest. So they have you pay off debts in order of smallest balance to largest balance.
Right. And then the reverse method of that, the debt avalanche.
Yeah, the debt avalanche has you do a similar thing, but instead of ordering them according to balance, you're going to order them according to the interest rate that you're paying on them. And you would start paying the highest interest rate. Now, mathematically, this one is the one that saves you the most money. Although some people prefer to deal with it the other way because they have kind of a bunch of little small ones and then a couple of maybe big, huge ones. They just sort of want to get the little ones out of their way.
Sure.
Which is fine as well. The debt avalanche is the one that mathematically, literally is inclined to save you more money, but they go with the snowball. Right.
So the logic behind the snowball is we pay off the smallest one first. That way you get a sense of accomplishment. Okay, I got rid of one. Then I move on to the next smallest. Okay, I got rid of that one. So it's like a baby step kind of thing, right? So the idea is for people that have a hard time getting motivated, that's the whole idea. The avalanche.
Let's be honest. It also is kind of motivating to have a payment go away, even if that was only a $25 a month credit card payment. You're like, oh, I don't even have that payment anymore. That's cool. Get little mosquitoes away. So I can get behind that for people who struggle with getting motivated there.
Yeah.
If motivation's not a struggle, the debt avalanche will save more money.
Right. So that's just one thing. So for some people, that's the best solution or the better solution, right? The avalanche one is, like you said, we pay off the highest interest first and get rid of that because that's the one that's going to accrue the most money. So if you do the debt avalanche, you save the most money because you're paying off the highest interest one first, right? Plus, it takes you less time to pay all of it off because you're not accruing all that interest.
Right, because of the financial savings with the interest accrual and being added to there. Well, Duncan, have you ever heard of the debt tsunami?
What's that?
I like that one. I mean, maybe you had it, maybe you hadn't.
I don't know that one. No.
You. The debt tsunami. I don't know if I'm going to quite explain it quite right, but basically, you kind of order them and pay them off in order of the one that's like bothering you the most.
Yeah.
And actually, I can kind of get behind it because sometimes when I've looked at when I don't have enough debt to make much of a list nowadays, but when I had more things, sometimes it wasn't the smallest balance or the highest interest rate that was the thing I just really wanted to go away, but there was something else. Like I had a private student loan.
Right.
It wasn't the highest balance, and it wasn't or it wasn't the smallest balance, and it wasn't the highest interest rate. But that thing had a very
hang on.
Interest rate right then. I was worried about that changing.
Pause. So you paused for a second. You said it had a variable interest rate?
Yeah, it had a variable interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty low at the time, but I was concerned about that changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want my payments to go crazy if it changed, because it did change once while I was paying it, and I noticed a difference. Like it really jumped up.
Right.
So I was really eager to make that one go away, even though it really didn't apply to either one of those methods. And so I actually did get rid of that one ahead of everything else. Yeah. And so I think there's something to be said for the whole debt tsunami thing, and I think the name is kind of fun too.
Well,
but if you have a reason to have one of them that is causing you more grief than the others,
yeah, just get rid of it. Sure.
Prioritize it. Get rid of it.
Well, first off, you said debt tsunami, and I'm sitting there thinking, what, you pay it off all at once? What does that mean? You sell one of your kids or something? I mean, so I didn't know what it was. No, so I guess 4 methods then, really. So the 4th method is the one that most financial advisors prefer. It's called consolidation. And what you do is you get a loan and you pay off all the cards at once and then cancel them, because when you cancel them now, you don't have all that extra credit sitting on you. So it instantly racks up your FICO score, right? And then you're paying the loan, which is just one payment. So now instead of paying 3 or 4 cards or 5 cards or however many it is, I'm just paying one loan. And loans, personal interest loans, or if it's a home equity loan or whatever it is, are often a lot lower interest rates than the cards. So that's actually the one that's the easiest to do, and it's the cheapest, and it's the fastest. And
you're not lining up anything because it is typically just a one loan situation.
Right, and it solves the snowball thing, because it's like, well, I'm having a hard time getting motivated to do all this. Well, the snowball thing is still irritating, because if you've got 5 cards, you've got to keep track of which one you're paying how much on. Right? But now I got that little bit of motivation because I paid off that first one first after 6 months. And it's like, okay, great. Why didn't we just pay them off all at once if we could? I mean, if you can get a consolidation loan, you should just do that, because now they're paid, right? And then cancel those cards, maybe keep one with a small amount on it, and then just pay that one thing. Okay, you got that sense of accomplishment. It's all handled and done. You just have to make this payment every month on the loan. And you can pay off that loan quicker if you have more money, because now you're not paying as much in interest. Right? So that's typically what a financial advisor will do, is let's see if we can consolidate all that shit just to get it out of the way, right? But they're stuck on the debt snowball. They never mention consolidation. Got to do it their way. There's only the one way for them.
People get very mad about this.
They're like, do you not understand math, Rachel?
Because mathematically, we are incorrect. You're right. If we are doing
On
math,
paper, you might pay less interest.
yeah,
They admitted it finally. Mathematically, they're incorrect. Yes, they're always incorrect mathematically.
on paper, you would pay off the highest interest rate first. Mathematically, that is correct. But as we said earlier, we're not talking about math here, y'all. We're talking about behavior change.
That's what's up.
And what got you into this mess was not a.
So I want to get to that. We're not talking about math. It's the Smart Money Happy Hour. We're not talking about numbers. Because what does money have to do with numbers? No, we're talking about behavior change. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? I mean, no, we're changing a habit. Yeah, I mean, sure. If you get into that kind of debt. Go ahead.
But yeah, let's be honest. Some financial behavioral changes aren't a bad thing necessarily, but
Depending on who you are,
we
yeah.
are also talking about math.
Yeah,
We're not eliminating math. We can talk about behavior changes and math.
right.
Just throw it out there. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, but I like how she admits, yeah, mathematically we're incorrect. Yeah, you guys are always incorrect mathematically.
A math problem. It was a you problem.
Tell
And a
them.
you problem and a me
Tell 'em.
problem. So we gotta fix us.
Once again, it's just that's the other thing is like we want to motivate you, but you're the problem. It's like, okay, that's real fucking motivating. It's like there's an old saying, the number one killer is shame. Because then you ask yourself, well, how did this happen to me? Or is this my fault? Or what could I have done differently? And then you get down on yourself and you don't act because you start blaming yourself. And what do? They play right to that right away. It's your fault. And why? Because their methods, their system doesn't work a lot of the time. And they have to have that to fall back on. Well, it wasn't that our system was wrong. It's that you fucked it up. That's their weasel way out of it. No, we're perfect. So if it didn't work, it must be you.
It's first, like it's the people that are managing the money that need to be fixed, not just the money. And so when you get these quick wins, when you get that momentum, that's when you see change.
And this works whether you have $30,000 of debt or $300,000 worth of consumer debt.
Yes.
Smallest to largest. That's what kept me going on the plan. I was like, I knock one out.
All three of these work. Or all four of these. The snowball, the avalanche, the tsunami, the consolidation. All of them work if you do them. This is why this is so stupid. They all work if you do it. If you don't do it, it's not going to work.
I freed up a payment.
Feels great.
I can use that plus all the other margin towards the next debt. And you actually see the light at the end of the tunnel instead of trying to take down the mountain first.
Yeah, and there was actually a study done between the debt snowball, which is what we teach, smallest to largest, or the debt avalanche, which is highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. And people actually got out of debt faster using the debt snowball.
That is a lie. If you Google that, I challenge anybody, send me an email. We'll go over this. Mathematically speaking, you get out of debt faster using the avalanche or the consolidation method, or even Lacey's tsunami method, maybe, depending. But the snowball is the one that costs the most money and takes the longest. Those are the two drawbacks. Why? Because you're not necessarily paying the highest interest first. Right? So you're accruing more interest on that debt. So it ends up taking you longer to pay it off because you just paid off this one first that had the smallest amount. So that's bullshit, what she said. There's no study that shows that. There's no variable like that. There's no apples to apples comparison. So she's full of shit. Once again, they never do any reading. They just make shit up.
Listen, avalanches are scary. Snowballs are fun. I'm choosing the snowball every time.
Get in that snowball fight, George.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, next is helping out adult kids / grandkids financially.
Ooh. Okay, this one's a little different.
It's a little nuanced. Because here's...
Well, you know what? I don't even want to get into that one. Why don't we... I'll clip that out. Why don't we just... wrap it up here. But it's like, yeah, I mean, once again, it's gray area shit. And they're trying to tell you there's only one way to handle it when there's lots of different ways to handle it. And then the other thing is, like she said, I mean, they don't ever really do the math. They don't think about it. They just sort of make shit up. They don't really have anything backing them. All the stuff they cite pretty much says the opposite of what they're telling you. They usually just read the headline and say, oh, that agrees with me. And then they don't read the article that says, well, actually, that's not true.
Listen, I'm all about the behavioral stuff. A lot of the work I do is behind it, and the sort of emotional parts of money and all of that, because they definitely are huge factors. But let's not pretend we're not doing math here. Like, we're kind of looking at all the sides of it, and where they absolutely fail is the element of personal choice. I've had clients of mine use a variety of strategies.
Right.
And I usually sort of pose it as, here are the personality types that might be better suited for these strategies, and kind of pair them that way so that they can try to see themselves, like, what am I more likely to be successful with, knowing how I think and feel about money and my situation.
Right. Behavioral finance, which is actually a study. It's a soft science, but it's a study. But it's about understanding how money works, right? And then understanding how to utilize what's best for you. Because, like, I'll give you a great example. You and me have had this discussion before, where Lacey's more prone to wanting to pay off the debt first, right? But that's because Lacey doesn't like having debt. Now, mathematically speaking, I'm more prone to want to do the savings first and have that cushion first. And mathematically, I would make more money. But if that's irritating Lacey, she can pay off the debt. She doesn't have to worry about it anymore. But I'm still paying off that debt 10 years later, right? Net-wise, I'll make more money, but I have to deal with the headache of it. Now, it doesn't bother me.
And Lacey will probably need less money because she's gotten rid of all of those payments.
Right.
And neither one of them are wrong, but they're definitely different priorities.
And they're different goals. And that's the point. Is for Lacey, the bigger priority is to get rid of the debt so she doesn't have to deal with it. For me, the phobia is something happens and I don't have the money. I'm not worried about the debt. I'm worried about not having the money to get through the next thing. So for me, I would rather have the liquid cash than pay off the debt. Mathematically speaking, that works out better in the long run. But once again, like you said, if your goal is I just want to get rid of this so I can live on less, then no, my method is not going to help you out. Right? Because you're going to save all this money, but you're still going to have all the debt. Right?
Right.
So, once again, I mean, there's not a right answer to personal finance because it's personal. And that's where they fuck the whole thing up. Plus, they don't ever read anything. They never read the articles. Okay, well, that was kind of our reaction video. Do you have any last words or thoughts you want to throw out there?
No. Well, you know what? I guess to our viewers, if you guys like some of these sort of reactionary videos and you would like to see more of those, maybe let us know in the comments that you want to see our reactions to some of these sort of longer things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have any you want to hear a reaction to, send them to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can everybody catch you at, Lacey?
As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com for articles I've written, information about workshop and courses. And if you have something you want to send us, like I've said before, or you want to invite yourself to come and talk with us on the show, go ahead and email us. And Duncan, where should they do that?
You can email us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It's down below. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.